Hello YouTube, I'm back. I'm Marty, and this is Louise, and today we're going to talk about Varanus Panoptes. There are 3 subspecies of Varanus Panoptes. Varanus Panoptes can be found in northern Australia. Varanus Panoptes rubidus can be found in Western Australia. Varanus Panoptes Horni can be found in New Guinea and Papua New Guinea. Until 1980, Varanus Panoptes, or the yellow-spotted monitor, or the floodplain goanna, or the Argus monitor, was considered a subspecies of Varanus gouldii. Today, we're going to focus on Varanus Panoptes Horni. In the wild, Argus monitors spend their days foraging for food, and they are apex predators. They will feed on fish, bugs, mammals, carrion, eggs, and other monitors. Okay, so before I talk about husbandry, humidity, temperature, feeding, etc., I just want to remind you that I'm not a biologist, I'm not a professional, I'm not a hobbyist, I'm just an amateur with a few lizards in his house. Okay, so let's start. I keep the babies in 40-gallon tanks or in 55-gallon tanks. I will keep them individually or by pair or by trio if they get along. The juveniles are housed in 70 inches by 30 inches by 30 inches wood enclosures. The enclosures are linked. There is a hole connecting the enclosures that gives the animals more space to roam. I plan to keep the adults in enclosures that are twice the size, or maybe build a walk-in terrarium in a walk-in closet. As for the temperature, the reptile room is between 75 and 78 degrees. I keep a basking surface around 120 degrees. That gives the animals a good temperature gradient between 75 to 78 degrees for the cool area, around 80 to 82 degrees for the ambient temperature, and of course a basking area around 120 degrees. When it comes to humidity, I prefer to keep the babies really humid around 80%. I like to keep the adults and the juveniles around 60 to 80% humidity for 6 months, and then around 50% humidity for 6 months. It helps me monitor the breeding activity, and it also lets me know when the female is actually cycling. Now, when it comes to food, I like to feed the animals a wide variety of prey items. I like to offer fish, chicken, bugs, shrimps, rodents, squid, eggs, and much more. Now, let's talk about the taming process. The Argus monitor is a bold and mighty lizard. It's not as shy as other species. So, I'm going to show you what I do is I like to feed the babies with the tongs. When they are ready, in the beginning I just give them the food in the little food bowl so they can have access to the food. And later on, I like to show them that the hand is a friend. What I mean by that is I want the baby monitors to think that the hand is a great tool to get access to food more easily, or I just want to show the baby monitors that the hand is a great tool to move from place to place, and that just helps me either manipulate, handle, or move the animals later on. They will not be 100% tamed. They eventually will be socialized and almost friendly, but in my opinion, a totally 100% tamed Argus is a cold Argus. What I mean by that is that these are very hyperactive monitors, and after even just 20 minutes or 40 minutes basking under the basking surface, they are all charged up. Remember that reptiles are solar powered, and when an animal is active, it doesn't like to be handled. An adult or juvenile or even a baby Argus monitor will not really let you handle it for more than 5 to 6 minutes. After that, they will want to scratch, they will want to escape, they will want to check things out. These are, once again, very hyperactive and very curious monitors. So once the baby or juvenile Argus monitors trust the hand, I am comfortable feeding them and moving them from place to place. Once the monitors grow a little bit, I like to use gloves. It's just a personal choice. I don't mind the scratches, but I don't like being scratched directly on my hands. Now, the Argus monitor is a natural-born digger. Varanus Panoptes has huge hands with huge claws, so around, I'd say, 4 to 6 months old, a baby monitor can do some damage. It's just the way it is. They are what they are. When it comes to handling a monitor, I don't like to hold a monitor by its shoulder blades. That is one thing I noticed, is that when two animals meet, they start to smell the neck area and the shoulder blades. So after seeing this behavior a few times, I came to the conclusion that the neck and shoulder area is a very sensitive area for monitors. So now when I handle a monitor, I always try to scoop them, and I try to handle them with one hand holding the lower back area. I never try to touch the upper back. I always try to manipulate the animals either by scooping them or by scooping them and holding them by the lower back area. Now, I am not going to lie, taming or socializing a monitor can take time, but one thing I noticed is that it is a lot easier to work with a captive born and bred animal than a wild caught or a farmed, hatched, or an imported animal. A little bit of background. In 2016, I purchased a female Argus monitor at a reptile show. The animal was already an adult, around 3 feet long, and I suspect that this animal was actually imported. Uh, it didn't look and it didn't act like a captive born and bred animal. I don't know how to describe this, but I can see a difference between the wild caught and the captive born and bred monitor. Now, once again, I'm not a pro, I'm not a biologist or anything. It's just a personal opinion and a personal observation. Now, I just want to talk about my small breeding experience. Well, not my experience, the experience of the animals. So, like I said, I like to keep the animals in connected terrariums. That was not the case in the beginning. The animals were housed individually. So, according to the older literature, and to other breeders, because I like to talk to a lot of breeders. I want to know how other people do things, because everyone has his own technique. And according to the older literature, I decided to put the male in the female's enclosure. In the beginning, Bonnie did not know what to do with a big male dragon in her enclosure. So she started to puff and arch her back, and she started to coil her tail, showing the male that he was not really welcome in the beginning. Eventually, the two animals started to smell each other, and the female accepted the male. She showed this acceptance by turning her back, and she uncoiled her tail. She acted more relaxed, and she allowed the male to smell her neck and shoulder blades. Eventually, the two animals decided to disappear behind the nest box. I left the male in the female's enclosure for about 3 days, and then I put her back in his own enclosure. About 30 days later, I could hear the female scratching the nest box, and she was preparing to lay her first clutch. The first clutch of eggs that I found, they were 3 eggs. 2 eggs buried in the substrate, deep down in the substrate, and 1 egg on top of the and 1 egg on top of the substrate. I decided to incubate these eggs, but they looked infertile. To me, they looked infertile. They looked like deflated suppositories, if I can if I have to describe an unfertile egg, it looks like a deflated suppository. Okay, it doesn't really look like an egg. The suck-in breeding attempt, the terrariums weren't connected at the time. I decided to let the monitors roam free in the reptile room. Once again, the reptile room is between 75 to 78 degrees, which is not too cold, not too hot, but it's not too cold for the reptiles to enjoy free time outside of their enclosures. So on this day, I opened both terrariums, and I let the female roam around in the reptile room first. Eventually, the male smelled the female and flew out of his terrarium. He decided to follow Bonnie, and on this day, Bonnie was not receptive. She kept running away from the male. I could hear her huffing and puffing, and I decided to separate the animals because obviously on this day the female was not receptive. Before separating the animals, I decided to take a close-up on the female's tail. She was wagging her tail, not to try to tail whip the male, but she was showing the male that she was not interested that day. So as you can see on the close-up, you can see the female is wiggling her tail to show the male that she is not interested. When I separated the animals, I started to think why this female is not receptive today, because she was experiencing the same symptoms as the first time. She started to gain a lot of weight. She didn't look fat, but she looked plump. So I thought that she was cycling once more. Well, I was wrong. She was actually preparing a sucking clutch of eggs. 25 days later, I found 3 eggs in the female's nest box. I found 2 eggs deep in the substrate and 1 egg on top of the substrate. These eggs once again were infertile. I decided to incubate them just in case. Later that day, I found 3 more eggs. Again, 2 eggs in the substrate and 1 on top of the substrate. So this female laid a total of 6 eggs for her sucking clutch. I decided to incubate the 6 eggs, but after a little less than a week, let's say, less than a week, the eggs developed fungus and mold. They turned out fungusy moldy. So I decided to adopt a different strategy for the third breeding attempt. The enclosures were connected, but I was too afraid to try the breeding enclosures. Don't ask me, the thing was there, it was prepared, but on this day I was a little afraid to let the monitors meet in the double enclosure. So once again I decided to let the monitors roam free in the reptile room, and on this day, 30 days, actually more than that, about a month and a half after the female laid her second clutch, I saw that she was cycling again, so I decided to let the monitors roam free in the reptile room once again. On this day, Bonnie was acting very peaceful. Clyde was very interested, and the female showed the male that she was receptive by walking very slow in front of the male. She was trying to tease the male for a little bit, so they started to do this romantic chase or the romantic walk for about a few minutes, yeah. And of course, my camera died. So I decided to run in the bedroom, charge the phone, and when I came back in the reptile room, I found the 2 monitors mating. The monitors stayed intertwined for about 10 minutes, maybe more, because remember, I was charging my phone to get the footage, and after the male finished depositing the seed, the animals just separated and went on to their Panoptes activities. This time I decided to put a heat mat under the nest box to keep the nest box at a constant temperature. The bottom of the nest box was around 85 degrees at all times, and the top of the nest box, the top of the soil, was between 82 and 85 degrees, depending if the basking light was on or not. 30 days later, again, I heard the female ARGUS monitor scratch in her nest box, and I found 2 eggs in the bottom of the nest box, and again 1 egg on top of the nest box. This time the eggs looked like fertile eggs. The egg that had a little crevice that I thought was infertile was actually fertile. The other 2 that looked fertile developed fungus and mold. They turned out fungusy moldy after a week. But the remaining egg that is now in the incubator has been incubating for 120 days now. Now, you can see on the footage I tried to candle the egg in order to check the embryo. I was talking to a French breeder, and I told her that the egg showed veins when I was doing the candling method, and she asked something like, "Is it moving in there?" So I had no idea, because usually I do the candling method for 3.5 seconds just to check the veins in the egg. On this day, I decided to leave the lamp a lot longer, pointing directly at the egg, and I hope you can see it on the video, but there was actually something moving in there, something wiggling like an alien egg. So this egg has been incubating for 120 days now, and I would really like to see this egg turn into a healthy baby. Because unfortunately Bonnie passed away shortly after laying the 3rd clutch of eggs. Now, once again, I don't really know how old she was when I got her, but I believe that she was about 4 or 5 years old when she unfortunately passed away. Now that I talk about it, it's probably 78% my fault, because once again, that was my first breeding attempt. I'm not a professional, and I think my mistake was to allow a female to breed that maybe was not supposed to breed, because she laid a first clutch of infertile eggs after mating, a second clutch of eggs containing 6 eggs total, again infertile eggs. Was that because she was retaining sperm? Was it delayed fertilization? I don't know, but the eggs turned out to be infertile. And on the 3rd breeding attempt, once again after confirmed mating, the female laid 3 eggs once more, 1 fertile egg and 2 infertile eggs. So that was my mistake. I allowed an animal to breed that maybe was not supposed to breed. If you have any information you want to share with me, I would be more than grateful. I'm just sharing information, all the information that I learned in literature, books, magazine. I also talk to breeders in Europe, in Africa, or people who lived in Africa. I also talk to breeders and keepers in Asia and South America. I live in North America now. And once again, I just want to point out that there are many ways to keep and breed reptiles. With monitors, some people have great success in very small enclosures, keeping the animals individually all year long, and they introduce the animals only for breeding purposes. Some people have great success in big naturalistic enclosures, keeping a male and two females, or a male and a female. That was the awesome video about Varanus Panoptes Horni. The Varanus Panoptes Horni. Well, okay, so this was a very long video about Varanus Panoptes Horni. I really hope you like this video, but before I finish this video, I need to remind you that the Argus monitor is a bold and mighty lizard, and they can grow up to 6 feet long. Clyde here is only a year and a half, and he is already 4.5 feet long. He is only a juvenile, or a young adult, and it's about time for him to get a larger enclosure. Like I said, I'm probably going to build enclosures that are probably twice the size, so twice as long and probably taller, or maybe build a walk-in enclosure. We'll see. Oh, and one more thing. If you're getting a baby Argus monitor, if you're getting a tiny little baby like this, it's going to turn into this within a year. Okay, so once again, I really want to thank you for watching this video about Varanus Panoptes Horni. In conclusion, this is a mighty and bold lizard with an amazing personality, I think. They are hyperactive and lovable. Thanks again for watching the video. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment down below, and I will see you very soon for another episode of